So we are live now. So our LinkedIn network should start to be notified that we're live. So just giving them a second to come in. We may be getting some more folks joining us today. But with that, Dennis, our designated fearless leader, I kick it over to you.
Yeah, so this is Legal AI Live. It's a webcast. It's a live stream. It's an experiment. It's a sharing. It's a collaboration, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm the director of the Center for Law, Technology, and Innovation at Michigan State University. I've been involved in the world of legal tech for many years, blogger, podcaster on the Kennedy Mile Report podcast, and done a lot of things, and very interested in, and have done a lot of things in the world of AI, lots of experiments. So kick it around the horn. I'll let somebody else introduce next. Maya?
Maya, you're muted. Well, while Maya finds the unmute button, I will go ahead and jump in. I'm Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney. I have a solo practice law firm leveraging tech and AI from the moment of my founding to deliver reasonable, low-cost legal services to the latent legal market. And I have a podcast where I talk about that, Law Subscribed, and I've been doing that for about as long as I've had my own practice, which is about 3 years now. Maya.
I can go now if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you both. I am the executive director of Justice Technology Association. I spearhead innovation that promotes access to justice via technology. I have a good understanding of the intersection between technology and business and the legal system, having worked both as an attorney and in change management consulting in tech companies, as well as with legal tech companies, and along the way also practiced law for several years. So glad to be here. Thank you.
And Gio?
Hello, my name is George Bellis. My friends call me Gio. There's a story behind that. You have to find me a bourbon. I'll tell you how I got that name. And I am a practicing attorney, 51 years. I've been using technology in the practice since I bought my first computer in 1982 for $12,000, and graduated then to, I thought the end of the world was when GUI took over and I had icons and a Platinum 486. I thought I'd never have to do anything again with technology, so I stopped writing a program for lawyers, and I've been adapting ever since. And then recently, in the last 2 years, trying to figure out AI and where it goes. This morning, I was just talking to a federal judge this morning. We both came to the same conclusion somehow this morning, and that is there's just too much happening right now, and it's almost impossible to keep up. But I've been using AI as much as possible. I served on the Illinois Supreme Court Task Force on AI. Last year, I was the chairman of the Illinois State Bar's Artificial Intelligence Committee. And it's really kind of surprising that they let a gray hair like me try to lead the way for technology and the young people. But it's absolutely amazing to me how law schools are not teaching this, how kids are graduating. I say kids because they're the age of grandchildren. They're not teaching anything about this. And we're left on their own devices to try to figure out what's going on. But like everybody else, I'm struggling with this and trying to adapt.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I do teach law students AI. In fact, just finished the AI and law class at Michigan State. We also do another class that I co-taught called New Technologies in Law, and I'm doing the spring semester class, which we had to add because of demand of the AI and law class there. And it is interesting because legal education is still pretty resistant to even allow students to use AI at all. So that is interesting. But I wanted to go back to what you're saying about letting the older people do things. What I find so cool about AI is that you can get up to speed really quickly on this stuff and get to be really good at it, no matter who you are. And we're really talking about The on-ramp has really only been 2 years. So you can get up to speed really quickly. So I think it's attractive to everyone for those reasons. But yeah, I'm about to do a presentation to the MSU faculty on AI. When actually I'm calling AI from the legal AI, the 30,000 foot view, because they want me to present on AI in about 15 to 20 minutes. And I initially said, there's no way I'm doing that. But I've now figured out a way. I couldn't get out of it, but I've figured out a way where I can do it at such a high level that it seems possible. So I think there's some things that we could go into on the education side, but one of the things I want to do on a regular basis on this webcast was something I do in my class, which is I just ask the students to say, what did you try in AI lately? So what have you been doing that it was kind of cool or that you learned something from? So I don't know, Matthew, you want to lead us off on that?
Yeah, sure. So I use it every day. I mean, it's really just become like Perplexity is what used to be Google search for me, right? Like whenever I have anything that comes up. And so for me lately, like even things like not even legal, right? Because I'm using it every day. So from like a personal standpoint, I'm getting somebody a birthday present, and it's a subscription to a cool AI powered wine thing. It's called Inventory. Vin is in vino instead of inventory. It's an interesting thing. And so that's like a cool AI thing that I'm not a big wine drinker, but this person I'm getting the gift from and the person who told me about Inventory, they're huge into wine. And so you could 3D model your setup and just using image AI, understanding it, like categorizes, tells you where your wine is located, what foods you could pair it with, what foods you have, that wine in your, collection will go well with based on the notes and the flavors and everything. So anyway, so that's a cool AI tool that has nothing to do with legal if you're into wine. But I was thinking, in addition to just getting this gift card and telling somebody, here's an annual subscription to this AI, cool wine AI technology, I should explain what it is. So I told Perplexity to tell me all about Inventory, the company, because I kept recorrecting a few times. Got it wrong. I changed it to Inventory. It was, oh, you must have meant inventory. No. Inventory. It's an AI wine company. Tell me about this. And it gave a great summary with links to reports on how much money it's raised and some other interesting things that this particular person I'm getting a gift for may find very interesting. And now I could use that. So I always think, well, how can I maybe use something like this in my work? And if I have to explain a new legal concept to a client, well, I do have Paxton. I mean, I sort of also use Paxton every day for the substantive legal work that I'm doing, and I'll use that to come up with some explanations. I really am a fan of, in Perplexity Pro, just the Perplexity proprietary model and what it comes up with when it scours the internet and synthesizes a summary. I'm a huge fan of whatever they're doing on the back end that makes it easy to understand what these summaries are. So lately, it's just been a lot of Perplexity for me.
Cool. How about you, Maya?
So, I'm taking it slower, definitely, than that. I've been using it here and there to really help with brainstorming on kind of the first pass of long form articles that I'm doing. It's been a really good way for me to kind of just jumpstart the process, especially when I'm collaborating with others. It really kind of gives a basis for discussion points around what we want to say and what's our position on a particular topic, even actually when it's incorrect. That actually in many situations is even more helpful for us, because catching that is something that often will flag a general misconception in the industry. So I would say that's where we're doing it most.
Cool. How about you, Gio? And Gio, I do want to say that when I see the books behind you, that my initial thought is how could you get those books into AI and actually unlock them and make them usable to you? But we'll see what you're doing.
We already are online. This years ago during COVID. So the books have been eliminated. But I'm a litigator, and I've been using it in several capacities. Drafting, I'm a big advocate of Lexis AI. I'm using it extensively for almost anything, even non-litigation matters, to ask questions and build things. I'm using Chat GPT, of course. I've been using it. I use it for drafting, but lately, we use Clio for our case management system. And Clio just came out with an add-on called Duo, which is an AI built into it. And so the LLM that I use, it uses my database, ChatGPT. So it incorporates both. So I now can do AI functions within Clio. So it gives me, as soon as I log in, it tells me what I have to do, tells me where to go when I ask questions. Just yesterday, I asked it to send a summary to a client of the status of the case, and it gave me an email to send to the client with the status of the case. So what I'm trying to do, and it really forces me to think, is before I do anything, I wonder how I can get an AI to help me do it. Even if I just get a contract on something, I throw that into the AI and ask it for comments. Give me a summary of the contract, give me some points, recommendations. And I've learned that the key to using it is in the prompts. And we really have to go to school on prompting. And that's what's going to drive everybody's use of the AI. And unless you master the prompting, it's going to be useless. Well, but you're not taking full advantage of it. But this is scary. I mean, at the last Bar Association committee meeting on the 8th, I sat there and I said, I'm a science fiction geek. I know Isaac Asimov's 3 rules of robotics. I've thought about it for 40 plus 50, and now I see it in play. But I vacillate between in awe of what's going on, perplexity because there's so much going on, and fear for our own humanity. I fear for the practice and for a lot of lawyers who are not adapting to it, but I also at times feel for our own humanity. And that's my science fiction geekness coming out. But it's absolutely amazing how fast this is happening to us. It's my gray hair, what's left of it, was having a hard time dealing with it. I don't know who can deal with this all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And that's one when I bring up in class is what's realistic. I mean, it is happening like just incredibly fast. It feels like, even faster than the internet, which is probably now the beginning of the internet, so the early mid 1990s internet, when it really felt that things were changing, and probably end of the 90s as well. But yeah, I think it's become one of those things where already in this really constricted amount of time, that the idea, like the presentation somebody wants to give about AI, is just insanely broad. And it's almost like you have to specialize on a tool or, a use or something here really quickly, because otherwise you can't keep up with it. I do want to give go ahead. Yeah.
Are you saying to focus in on one AI, become expert at that, rather than trying to master them all?
Yeah, because sometimes I hear people will say, like, what's the best AI tool to use? And I'm like, well, it's like the Steve Jobs thing said, like, what's the best camera to use? The one that you have with you. And I'm like, if you can get good on one of these, then I think that's the best way to go, instead of when people say, like, oh, should I use this or any of these 10 things? I'm like, I don't know how you would do that. And because I use three AI tools right now pretty regularly. So that's ChatGPT, that's Claude, which we might talk about this, but I'm thinking about dropping. And then out of nowhere came Gemini Advanced from Google, which I used to just trash the Google AI tools all the time. And now that's the one that I'm going to. But I'm like, if I go to 3, then I'm already running into this thing where I can't remember where I had the chat that I did the thing. And and then when somebody says, well, there's co-counsel and there's Harvey and there are all these things, I'm like, no, I think you got to pick one, learn the principles. And then if you see a place where it starts to break down, then and you find problems, that's when you'll know you want to go to the next one. And that's what I found over the last couple of years. So that's my thought there. I do want to give this example of something I did this morning because I thought it was kind of fun use of AI. So I do this thing every quarter that I call my personal quarterly offsite, where I kind of sit down and do my personal strategic planning. And one of the results of the one I did at the end of December was to create a stop doing list. So it's a sort of the start, continue, stop sort of exercise. And what are the things I should try to stop doing? So that's a kind of a daunting task to just put together yourself and say like, oh, can I think of everything? So I used, the Gemini Advanced and ran it through a couple iterations. And I have this really great list I want to stop more things than probably I'm going to be able to, but I have this really great list of 12 things that I can stop doing. And it's given me some action steps on how to do that. And it's a great use because sometimes in law, people look to these tools and say, I'm looking for answers instead of like directions or ideas or the brainstorming that Maya talked about. And and so I'm really worried about hallucinations in law. That's what people talk about a lot. I'm like, well, somebody once said the hallucinations are the feature of generative AI. And so I'm like, if I do this and I say, let's start out with these 30 things, give me 30 things, and then I bring it down to 10 or 12, then I've jumped back in. It really feels like something I've created, and the AI has just really helped me. And I think that for me has been the most useful thing. And one of the things I stress with students is that if you move away from the idea of saying, this is a substitute for search, I'm not looking for the answer, I'm looking for something that helps me get to what it is that I need and become very usable. That's where I'm finding the greatest benefit of AI right now.
Dennis, on the Gemini side of things, because I've only used the free version of Gemini, and I actually think it's great. But I've heard for the paid one, do you have access to the deep research feature yet? And have you tried that?
I tried the deep research feature once. It didn't make sense for what I was doing, but I'm using like the most advanced one. And part of the reason is that I've noticed in the last month or so that Claude and ChatGPT have really cut back on the output that they give you. And they say like, do you really want 10 things? Here's the first 3. Do you really want the rest of them? Okay, here's 3 more. Do you really want the rest of them? That kind of thing. So one of the things I like is the completeness of the Gemini Advanced, which I think is 2.0, I believe it's called. And the length of the answers and the complexity of those answers. And it tolerates a bit more iteration than the other tools now, which is an interest. I don't know exactly what's happening. I think it has a lot to do with cost and energy and those kinds of things, but it feels like they're really limiting what it is that you can do in those tools. But yeah, so it was like, if somebody said, wait, and this is what I love about lawyers and AI. Wait, you're paying another $20 a month? Like, wait, this could be like the greatest technology tool we've ever found. And we as lawyers are going like, wait, it's $20 a month,
Well, so I found that though, like if you're a Google Workspace user, so like for my law firm and for my other entity, I have Google Workspace. You might actually be able to get it for less than $20 a month, depending on your level of Google Workspace subscription. And so I'm actually kind of looking into that right now as a way for me to rationalize, well, it actually will cost me less than $20 a month, but I have to commit to a year. And I'm already using all these other AI tools too. So I'm kind of in that boat where like, I love AI, I'm using AI, but do I really need to pay for another tool? But I'm trying to figure out, is deep research worth it? Because I've heard some really good things about it.
I had a professor last year say, so what's the big deal about AI? We've had it for years. It's called an associate. You'd give them the project. A couple of days later, they come in with a draft, edit it, give some comments, some feedback. A couple of days later after that, you'd get another draft. And finally, you get something that you could use and you circulate and publish whatever you're going to do. And you pay that associate $10,000 a month. So now you could have the same work for less than $500 a month. And you're whining about $20 for crying out loud. Think of the value that you're getting out of this. And I just saw a study, I forget where, that it said that the number of associates that are being hired this year is down again. So firms aren't hiring associates. And why aren't they hiring associates? Because there's no work or something's replacing them.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Maya, are you hearing anything along those lines?
Yeah, I chiming in on that, I would say that I mean, there was that report that just came out from the Center on Ethics of the Legal Profession at Georgetown. I think it was last week or maybe a little earlier, just talking about how the economic impact that this is going to have on firms. I mean, we've been talking about the death of the billable hour for 20 years. And I've certainly been talking about it since 2016 when we launched Nextlaw Labs, and we're trying to kind of push the idea of incremental revenue coming from different streams. And now I think the genie really is out of the bottle, because I think that exactly what Joe was saying is correct. I mean, I think fewer and fewer associates are going to be hired. That we're going to see a shift in the shape, the traditional diamond shape that we had of law firms and law firm structure, as in addition to the industry itself, frankly. But I think that, with the, they're still posting, good financial performance, but they're making these significant structural changes to their business models. And I think a lot of them are going to be figuring out how they can keep, profits per equity partner, and at the same time, high and exciting for everybody in that world, but also figuring out how they can leverage, for pennies on the dollar, essentially. And then also be thinking about all the generative AI tools that are out there for their consideration. And at the same time, figuring out, like, where is the legal profession going, honestly, like at writ large? Because if we are hiring fewer associates, that's fewer attorneys. And we've got a justice gap that is growing and growing and growing, and work that is piling on constantly. I think there's work will always be expanding. I think it's just going to be done differently. So it's more of an existential question, frankly. but I think, we really have to think about this. Like, if we're not going to be generating, we have nowhere near enough lawyers anyway. Not what everybody would say, but to fill the need. And if we're going to have fewer of them because we have technology, then we've got to free up technology to be able to fill that gap in one way or another. So
yeah, and this goes to Gio's point, because I see this with law students, and because if you're a law student or a new recent law school graduate, and you see everything that says AI is changing everything, and you're in a law school that doesn't allow you to use AI, or you're in classes where the professors don't use it, let you use it at all, and they assume that you're using it only to cheat if you would use it, then the skill sets that you're coming out are not really what the employers are looking for. And at the same time, what I'm seeing with my students is I had some of my graduates from last year go into firms, and now they are basically part of the AI strategy group of their firms, like less than a year out of law school. And, so that skills gap is really interesting. The other thing I saw today was that looking at the different, I'll call it industries, professions, that sort of thing. And I think this is Ethan Malik at Wharton posted this, but in law, it was like the use of AI, I'll call it use, but I think he was going at something a little bit different, was like around 4%. And it was basically the bottom of all these industries. And I think there's this other growing skills and knowledge legal gap where clients are doing stuff in AI and they don't have lawyers who can do the legal work for it.
So
Like they
I
don't
just want to
understand it.
I just want to say a comment we just got was, if you're not a law school that supports and explores AI, you should transfer to another school.
Well,
Yeah.
at Michigan State, we're in favor of that, right? So
And I think Michigan State is an exception because people I've talked to here in Chicago, I tried to get a professor from U of I law school to talk about AI for a conference I'm arranging. There was nobody teaching AI in law school at the U of I. And several other law schools I've asked kids who are in their last year looking for jobs, I said, what did you learn about AI? Nothing.
So Gio, on that note, I've actually done some. I mean, I don't know if you could call it like true guest lecturing, but I've come and spoke it to Paul, who's asked me to come and speak because that's where I went to law school, and they know I'm out here talking about AI and learning everything I can about AI. And I come and for like 2 or 3 years in a row now. No, it's been 2 years because it's hard to remember. AI is only like really like Gen AI has been here for only 2 years and a month and a half. So for 2 years now, I've come in and I've spoken to all of the first years, and in like some tech and law practice course that they require you to take it to Paul. And I talk about AI and I talk about how it's great because that's not a lot of information that they're getting from other sources, right? And still, like, I also only have like 2 or 3 students each time I speak reach out to me saying, wow, this is interesting. This is going to revolutionize everything. And so like I think they're getting overwhelmed with everything, these students too. And there's a lot of criticism about learning how to think like a lawyer is what law school teaches you and like what use does it actually have. And I think they should learn some practice ready stuff to go start their own solo practice, going back to Maya's point of like, what are we going to do? I mean, I've literally staked my career on that. And so I think they need to start doing that. But being able to think like a lawyer and also learning some skills of like interpersonal and intrapersonal communication skills, like that will help you like better use the AI too. And like thinking like a lawyer is what distinguishes us from any layperson using Paxton or these legal AI tools and actually getting good results versus mediocre results and knowing what is a quality result and what isn't. So I still think law school plays an important role, regardless of the lack of teaching of AI kind of a thing, although they definitely need to get better about that. But DePaul is trying by bringing in outside people.
Yeah, it's man, there's so many issues there, right? And I feel like I'm right at the center of it in what I'm doing. But you see the approaches are so different, and there is this coming wave too, right? Where we're saying the general approach in law schools is that in order to learn to think like a lawyer, in your first year, you shouldn't be able to use AI. You should learn to do things in the traditional way, right? And that's a legitimate, argument for that. But now 2 years into this, we're having one else come in, and this will continue to be the case, who've used AI a lot. And then to say, stop, you can't do this. I mean, law school's done this for a while, right? To say like, we know that you've used iPhones and laptops your whole educational career, but in law school, in certain professors' classes, you can't bring any technology into the classroom, which is bizarre. And I was writing a syllabus for a class I'm going to teach at University of Michigan, talking about technology policy, and I realized that they have a really drastic technology policy at University of Michigan to enforce in-person classroom stuff. And I'm like, what's weird about AI and the technologies is they're the most incredible learning tools we've ever had as humans. And we're telling people, despite that, you can't use it. You have to do things in the old way. We want you to write by hand. Like I can't even tell you like the number of conversations I've had this year where people said, it's such a shame that kids aren't taught cursive writing anymore and they don't know how to read it. And I'm like, okay, I'm left-handed, I'm older. Like you can't read my cursive writing either. Like I can barely read it sometimes.
Although, Dennis, here's the thing. Are we teaching students typing or not because they're just doing it outside of class? So there's something to be said of, well, they're already learning about AI because they're using it all the time outside of like school and law school. Why do we need to teach them something they're doing anyway? And that is pushback I've heard that kind of resonates a little bit.
Right. But that's the same thing that law firms would say. Like, we don't need to train people on technology because these are the digital natives. Then you go like, but they don't know how to do track changes and they don't know how to do document management. They go, of course not. They've never used it, but like they can learn it fairly quickly. But it's like I don't know what the time was, like 10, 15 years ago, where it seemed like like everybody just said, we're not going to do training on technology anymore. Like, you start a new job, you just jump in and we're going to assume that you know this stuff. And the fact is that people don't know it very well.
So Dennis, if it's okay, I did learn something that legal AI is doing better than other AI. I think that might be an interesting topic to talk about.
Okay.
And
Cool.
this is just yesterday. So I had on a live version of my podcast yesterday, Jonathan Mast. He's doing some really interesting content on like AI and prompt engineering, particularly in the digital marketing space, but also just for businesses in general to like be more productive, right? Someone who's not a lawyer recommended I check out his stuff, and I reached out and he was happy to come on. So one of the things he does is he will use and pay for and test out these AI aggregators like Poe, where you could bring in ChatGPT and Claude, and you could run a prompt and see what all of them say and come back and like do some things like that. But what these aggregators don't do, that some legal tech has started to do really well, is just pick the best model for the task and use that model. And so I know for a fact Paxton is doing that in addition to their own large language model. I know that some of these other tools are doing it. GCAI started out with just as a GPT wrapper, and now they're multi-model. And so there's more and more of these multi-model legal AI tools, and the companies are deciding what is the best model to use for the task that the lawyer has directed that we want to do. And that, as far as I could tell, we're the only industry that's doing something like that. And so I'm just interested to get people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I like I like the idea. It's sort of like I'm curious whether what they're doing is saying, because there's been this approach of saying, like, let's just hit multiple models and do what I'll call some kind of averaging, like pull out the best, which is one approach. And what you're saying is we figure out what the job you're trying to do, and then we pick the one or two models that make sense. So there's a little bit of difference in approach there, right? So that's intriguing because I think in some cases you say, like, if I'm doing math or I'm doing business or I'm doing something like that, you definitely want to go to certain models. I do this thing where I say, if I know I wanted to pull from the internet, then I go to Bing Copilot, and I won't. And it disappoints me a lot, but it sort of gets me because I know I want the internet stuff. And other times I say, I don't want that. So there is that. So I think as we look to say, like, how can we get better output for what we want? We're trying to say, is it through prompting? Is it through specific models? Is it through some sort of hybrid approach? Is it through running it through multiple different things and seeing what comes out, which I tend to call averaging?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an interesting approach that you see. I don't know whether it's legal specific, but I think legal has this issue around accuracy that is, I'm not saying it's unique, but it's something that we're really fixated on, and it makes us need to be really clear about what any given AI tool is going to do. I don't know, Maya, do you have some thoughts on that before I know you have to leave, but let's get some thoughts from you.
No. I mean, I think you're right on target, and I think that a lot of it remains to be seen. And I mean, there are so many different use cases. I mean, like I spend most of my time working in the kind of the access to justice and direct to consumer space, and they're trying to figure this stuff out, but with a completely different user base. So it's really kind of I think it's just early days. So
Any other final thoughts for you, though, just in general, not on that topic, Maya, before you have to leave us?
Well, yeah, no, thank you. Sorry, something just came up. No, I mean, there's a lot of activity going on, and I'd love to hear other folks' thoughts, maybe on a subsequent call about kind of the AI models and how folks can see them being used and leveraged to, for example, help legal aid providers that can't serve anywhere near the people that ask them for help, or, and what are some of the real challenges that are being faced by them. And it goes well beyond figuring out what tool to use. Of course, budgetary constraints are always an issue, but then there's also figuring out these very same questions, but just for a different set of use cases. So yeah, I mean, that's a whole different subject in and of itself, but I look forward to it. I look forward to it next time.
I mean,
Yeah, I think so. Maya, one of the things I'm looking at as one of my pet projects at MSU is looking at AI and what I call elder justice. So elder law, elder justice. So looking at the AI and access to justice, but in that specific area, because there are some things I think that AI could help with there. And so
Yeah, I
we'll
agree.
be doing an event in March around that, sort of a design thinking event, to see if maybe we can come up with some cool ideas in that space.
Oh, yeah. And, that overlaps with so many other areas of law and constituencies that I think, and communities that are impacted, that I'd love to hear more about it. Thank you guys so much. Good luck for the rest of the group.
Right,
Bye-bye.
great. So one of the things I want to talk about in education, which is kind of interesting, and because Gio, you touched on this, like how do we train students in this? And if the university is trying to figure out which tool to use, they have concerns about data privacy, other issues around those lines. And then in legal, we have these specific AI tools. And a year ago, Lexis and Westlaw sort of dumped their AI tools, out to students and faculty without much in the way of training. And then just a week ago, gave students access to CoCounsel, just almost out of the blue, without training. So students know that they have access. The faculty, and especially the legal research and writing faculty who are at the front lines on this, now have had one of the primary vendors kind of dump this tool that has profound implications into the legal education system, especially for 1Ls, without saying like, oh, here's how we'll train it, here's what you're going to do. And so I'm part of meetings where we're going like, what are we going to do with CoCounsel? And students are going like, yeah, we got CoCounsel, I was trying it, and so I think that that's that speed, and then also the push where you say like, if we're going to train people, who the heck is going to do it? So I'm part of the AI committee at Michigan State's law school, and we had a meeting yesterday. And I felt I spent like a decent chunk of the meeting saying, no, Dennis is not the person who's going to train everybody on AI. That's not what my job is. That's not what I want to do. But who the heck is going to do that? And almost by default, it's falling on the legal research and writing instructors who get students in the first year. And then they're sort of saying like, well, then there's 2Ls and 3Ls, they can kind of figure it out. And it is sort of like the industry has kind of put legal education into a really tough spot. And if you think about it, Gio, in terms of CLEs, other things, if we're trying to train lawyers on using AI, I don't even know how we do it at this point.
It's like, think about when you were handed your PDA, and you oh, here's a new tool. Who taught you how to use it? You got on it. Even kids, you give a 5-year-old an iPad, they're gonna play around with it. No, they're gonna learn it. I think that's how we're gonna have to learn it. We're gonna have to everybody's gonna have to put their hands on it and use it and see how they're going to be able to use it. And not everybody's going to use it the same way. Dennis, I had a thought. You give a law school exam, right? I assume it's in person, but I don't know if they're writing in cursive in the blue book anymore.
No, I think it's all on laptops now.
Yeah. So why they're going to be able to use AI in the practice? Why can't they use AI in answering the questions? And you might get everybody, a bunch of people using different tools to answer the question. I think the real trick, the art is going to be in you asking the right question that's going to stimulate different ways to use it. But if they're going to use it in practice, why not use it in answering the questions? Is that cheating? I don't know. is it cheating for me to use Westlaw and Lexis and drafting something? Is it for me to take my brief and throw it into Westlaw and Lexis comparison? You know, we all know as practicing lawyers that there's not a federal judge or law clerk that doesn't have access to Westlaw and Lexis. What they choose to use is a different story. But what they first do is they take somebody's brief and they throw it into there to ask for a critique of the brief using the Westlaw tool. I forgot what it's called. And is that cheating? Would I take my opponent's brief and I throw it in to evaluate the brief? Is that cheating? You know, and I want to, I've got thoughts running all over the place.
Well, Gio, that made me remember what Tom Martin wrote about in his Substack, Tom Martin of LawDroid, about like retrieval augmented generation, and he analogized it to closed book versus open book test. And so if you want more reliable AI, you got to give them an open book test to have a more reliable AI. Well, if you want more reliable answers from your students on the exam, you got to let them use the tools, the resources, the books, whatever, because you still that being able to find those answers even in an open book test is still a skill. And speaking of that, I found that different AI tools leveraging retrieval augmented generation differently are better at that skill than others. Yeah.
I want to go back to something Dennis mentioned too. Hallucination. Every time I talk to anybody new about AI, and the first thing they say, well, it gives you fake answers. It hallucinates. And that's why we shouldn't use it. That's a concern from 2 years ago. I don't think we have to worry about that any more than you have to worry about an associate's work in giving you a draft memorandum. Yeah, you're going to have to check it out. And if you're going to file it in court, you're going to be responsible for the contents of it. And if all you do is worry about hallucination, you're never going to get it done. And AI is getting to the point now where you can ask it, are you sure about the answer? Did you verify the answer? Yeah. We live in such a mind-boggling different world that we did 6 months ago. I remember 25 years ago hearing the quote for the first time, change has never been this fast before and will never be this slow again. And it's it's more and more true as we go on. We're in the middle of change like we've never seen before. I remember what a big deal it was for me to have a car phone in the 80s. You know, a car phone.
I remember my dad getting a car phone. It was a big deal.
Yeah, what a car, fax machines. Remember all the worries that people had about fax machines, that it's not going to, you can't rely on it. You can't do this. All of these things come out, and usage overcomes all of those apprehensions.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because we've been watching some shows from the 70s, TV shows, and it's like the whole, people have to stop at phone booths and they're driving around. You can't get in touch with people, and you're going like, wow, these shows would be completely different, like detective shows, police shows, if they just had a cell phone. Or when somebody does have a cell phone, it is like the thing with the cord that you pick up in your car. It's such a it is such a different world. And then the pace of change, because what you say about hallucinations and the change that's happened in the last 2 years is interesting. I had a friend of mine who said, I was comparing AI to like this mythical perfect human, and we all know people, like lots of them, were basically human hallucination machines, right? We can't trust anything that they say. So we do have that, but I sort of feel like in the last 6 weeks, the changes I've seen in the AI, the big LLM tools, have changed so much. I almost feel like some of the training I'm doing on prompting, some of the things, the way I designed my class this semester, I had to change because the tools have changed so much and the capabilities have changed so much.
For your teaching, you have to adjust it midstream.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I'm doing more. So this semester It's like more simulations, really a lot of flexibility on the reading materials, flexibility on what we cover. I mean, then we have a change of administration, right? So I'm like, I just told him, I said, we're not going to talk about legal issues and the laws and stuff till much later in the semester because what's the point right now? Like if we talk about the Biden White House executive order on AI right now, there's a decent chance in what, a week it doesn't exist anymore. So like, why would we spend the bandwidth on that?
So just jumping in here, being cognizant of time, we have about 7 minutes left. And for us, the people who are talking today, at least I know Dennis and I for sure, Gio, maybe you too, we want to make it to the Legal Tech News Live thing that they do, which is at the top of the hour. So I'd love to just end this with, and I just made this up on the fly, Dennis. I hope it's okay with you.
Yep.
Like 1 or 2 things that we're working on, or like a podcast that we've listened to, or like something about AI where we're learning about it. And since I just threw that on both of you, I'll give mine first. There was a recent interview of Sam Altman by Adam Grant on his podcast Work Life. Like, this was just 3 days ago. I listened to it. It was really interesting. I think they recorded it before they released the $200 a month version of ChatGPT Pro, because they talk about some stuff like that you could tell is a little dated, but otherwise it's really good. There's also a podcast, a new series called Pioneers of AI. I listen on Apple Podcasts, but a quick hack is if you go to pod.link in the URL box and whatever browser you use, you could type in the name of any podcast. It will give it on all the places it's available. It's part of the Masters of Scale network, and it's really interesting. They're bringing in some really interesting pioneers in AI where I'm learning a lot. And the biggest takeaway I heard, I can't remember which one of those episodes it was from, was somebody said somebody's using bullet points to tell ChatGPT to say, turn these bullet points into a nice email for so-and-so. And then somebody's getting that email and receiving it and putting it into ChatGPT and saying, hey, could you summarize this email into 3 bullet points? And so like the question to, I can't remember if it was to Sam Altman or to somebody else, was, can we just tell the AI when it does this to let the users know, hey, I'm the one that translated this in the first place. Maybe you two should just email bullet points to each other. Work on that. So that's my takeaway for this month.
There's a couple things that, so because I just started teaching class, the one thing I use Ethan Mollick's book Co-Intelligence as the starter textbook for my class, and I think it's the best. It came out in April. I think it's the best kind of popular, kind of short book summary to do, and my students like it. You know, as we mentioned, it came out in April, so some things already to be dated, but he doesn't go in. It's just a good starting point. And then I'm just really intrigued by the Google Notebook LM as a roll around, RAG, retrieval augmented generation tool, because you can grab your stuff and just put it into a PDF and pull it up there, and you can start to analyze it. I know people talk about the Notebook LM, it will create this podcast and people love it, but that's not what the power I see. I see the power I can grab all the stuff that's mine and put it into PDFs and then just have it analyze, and then be able to analyze it and ask questions. I think that's really cool. My other thing, I've seen a New Year's resolution to everyone listening and to all lawyers and anybody who wants to get to the head of class in AI, spend the $20 a month. Like use a pro version of something. Gio.
I'm all over the place. I'm experimenting with different things. Lately, the one thing I've been using, especially for contracts, is Spellbook. And it's a great analyzer of contracts. If you're a lawyer and you're dealing with contracts, any kind of, try it out. But I keep going back to ChatGPT, and the answers I'm getting from it are incredible. The resources but amazingly enough, I asked it to do a blog for me on a certain topic, and I got a blog back, and then I ran it through something else, and it had copied somebody else's blog onto it saying that this is the blog you should write. It literally copied somebody else's blog verbatim and gave it to me. So we're working our way through it. We're playing with it. Like the first time we used the cell phone, we didn't know what we could do with it. Now God knows what we're going to do. Like,
Yeah, my last thought on that though, Gio, is what I've found that I do now these days is I will just dictate into like a Google Doc, because that AI has gotten a lot better. Just word vomit, thought vomit, all the ideas I have to write an article on something, and then use that and throw it into AI and say, based on this, expand on this in such and such ways for this type of audience, for this type of thing. And even just giving it a little bit of something, I have not found any sort of plagiarism risks with doing something like that to try to restrain it a little bit. Just give it a little something more.
Right. And if you have like a body of work out there, that it will pick up some simulation of your style. And that can make a difference. Or you can describe your own style and then have it right in that voice. And that also makes a difference. And that is like the ultimate extension of your, like bullet points to email to bullet points thing, is that I just say, like, here's my thought. Like you say, here are my thoughts, write this in my style. And it's out there. And then somebody's saying, like, that's Matthew, that's amazing what you wrote. It's brilliant. You say, well, I was involved in writing it. The Copyright Office doesn't think I was the author, but I feel like the author of it.
This is why I say AI enhanced. Everything I do is I'm AI enhanced, right? That's what I am. AI enhanced lawyer. But at some point, my hope is me saying I'm an AI enhanced lawyer goes out of style. That's like saying I use the internet, right? Like that's
right. I use electricity. Yeah.
Electricity enhanced attorney over here. Which Gio said he's been practicing law long enough that was a thing.
Well, I never will let it go.
Well, so I mean, thanks for having me to do this. I don't know if Gio or Dennis, you want to wrap us out?
Yeah, this is the first time we've done the live thing, and our plan is to do it the second Tuesday of each month at 2:00, and we'll try to grow the audience, and we'll develop a cast of regulars, which might be interested in being part of it. That's cool. Let us know. And we'll see what audience we grow and what people are interested in. But this is just a way for us to we were talking about this stuff anyway, so we thought we'd share it with the world.
Thank you for inviting me.
Until next month. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.